Friends from the media, good afternoon. Welcome to today's press briefing. The Chief Executive will first speak before answering questions. Because of the epidemic, please keep your social distance. We'll first hear from the Chief Executive. Friends from the media, people of Hong Kong, the Executive Council has just convened a meeting. In the meeting, we have approved the use of Emergency Regulations Ordinance, Cap 241(2)(1) to legislate a provision that the 6th Chief Executive Election Day, scheduled on the 27th of March, will be postponed to the 8th of May 2022. So the original scheduled ending date of, the original start date of the nomination period that was supposed to start this Friday, it will be postponed to between the 3rd of April to the 16th of April. As you all know, that this decision was made on the back of the current situation, a situation that we have not seen in the past 2 years. The situation is aggravating and quite critical. And in order to protect the health of Hong Kong people, the government should focus all resources to fight the epidemic. We cannot afford to be distracted, and we cannot afford to make mistakes. This is in line with the important instruction of President Xi. That means we should mobilize all available resources and adopt all necessary measures, because our main responsibility is to stabilize the epidemic situation. This is not the first time when we do so. At the end of July 2020, when we were faced with the 3rd outbreak. Similarly, with the Chief Executive in Council has invoked the Emergency Regulations Ordinance to postpone the election date of the 7th of the electoral election that was scheduled to take place on the 6th of September 2020 by 1 year. The decision was at that time, before this decision was made on the 30th of July 2020, we had 149 cases. Half of them were imported cases. Today, in the 5th wave after the Chinese New Year, the situation has aggravated rapidly. The number of cases rises exponentially. Yesterday, we had a record high number of 6,116 cases. The majority of them are local cases. Between the 1st and the 16th of February, we have recorded 15,139 confirmed cases, which is close to the total number of cases in the previous 2 years. And it has far exceeded our capacity in every single segment of our anti-epidemic effort. This is our current situation. This is how serious the situation is. The election involves only 1,462 voters who are members of the election committee, but still there might be public health risks. In addition, there is the social distancing measures. So with these restrictions, the candidates who aspire to stand in the election would not be able to do the canvassing, including meeting with members of the election committee, to meet the public, to explain their manifesto, or to answer questions asked by reporters. So to a certain extent, this would undermine the openness, fairness, and transparency of the election. And I will also explain whether there are existing legislations that we can use to make the postponement. Well, we have made use of it, although they are two different pieces of legislation. One is the Chief Executive Election Ordinance, the other one is Electrical Election Ordinance. Under the CE Election Ordinance, that is Section 21(1), if before the election, the EAC is of the view that the election might affect public health, they can postpone the election date by 14 days at the maximum. So this cannot meet our needs because of the epidemic. No matter how much effort we put into it, it doesn't look like that the epidemic will subside in a fortnight. Of course, the EAC, the Election Affairs Commission, may exercise their power to postpone the election again, but continuous exercising of their power will add to the uncertainty of the election, and it should not be used on the CE election. Another section states that if at the end of the nomination period there is no nominee, then starting from 42 days from the end of the nomination period, the election procedure may start afresh. But if we make use of this approach, it is rather passive because it depends on whether there are any nominations at the end of the 14-day nomination period. Similarly, this will bring uncertainty to such an important election. So it's not the piece of legislation that we can invoke. Next, we needed to consider the invocation of the Emergency Regulation Ordinance. This is fully justified. As I explained, without a doubt, currently Hong Kong is in a very critical situation. We postponed the electrical election because of the epidemic. Today, it is the same reason, but the circumstances is different, just like day and night, because we have every day thousands of confirmed cases, and the peak is yet to come. The second justification is that there is no existing legislation for us to use to implement the postponement. Thirdly, the last time when we postponed the election day of the electrical election, we invoked the Emergency Regulation Ordinance. So this time round, because of the epidemic, we make use of the same ordinance again, and this is in line with our previous occasion. And on a number of occasions, the court has made rulings. The last one was the 21st of December 2020. It's a ruling made by the Court of Final Appeal. The court was of the view that when it is an emergency situation and for public health, the chief executive may use this power. The power is quite general and is quite flexible if the Emergency Regulation Ordinance is used. So it is fully justified and backed by legal reasons. We consider three factors in relation to the date to which it should be postponed. First is the development of the epidemic. Two, the need of the change of government. And thirdly, some principles in relation to election. First, in relation to the epidemic. According to a number of experts, today we see the number of cases increasing at an exponential rate, which is worrying. But still, the peak is yet to come. Today's figure is 3,000 or so, but we should not let our guard down. I believe that the peak is not here yet. With the full support of the central authorities, the Hong Kong SAR government will put in more effort to implement various measures. These measures include formulation of a plan for territory-wide universal testing. But it takes time for such work to be effective. At this moment, we think we will need 2 to 3 months to stabilize the epidemic situation. Taking reference of the 4th outbreak, which lasted for a period of time. The second factor is the need to change the government. The chief executive-elect would have to go through a process under which the central authorities would have to appoint the chief executive-elect. Then the chief executive-elect will have to form their team. And the members of the team will have to go through a similar appointment procedure before they can take the oath and take office on the 1st of July. So we need to think and consider for the chief executive-elect by giving them time to make preparations. And the third factor is some principles. Well, for an election, we need to make sure that certain principles are abided by to ensure its fairness and openness. The first paramount factor is nomination period, which should not be fewer than 14 days. And then, at the end of the nomination period and before the election day, that is the time when the canvassing work for the candidates is to be done. There needs to be 21 days. So 14 days plus 20 days are set as by way of principle to ensure fairness and openness of the election. Well, for the nomination period, well, the candidate will have to get 188 nominations and from different sectors nominated. And then they make use of the 21 days to canvass votes. They don't just have to canvass votes from the 1,460 or so members. They also have to canvass support from the public. We need that before the 30th of June 2020, the election date has to take place. Having considered all these factors, the Executive Council agreed that the new election date will be on a Sunday, the 8th. The new nomination period is between the 3rd of April to the 14th of April. So you can tell from these dates that we have set aside 14 days as the nomination period. And there are still 21 days, that is from the 16th of April to the 8th of May. There are 21 days for candidates to canvass votes and for their electioneering activities. The EXCO will formulate the regulation. Once it's done, it will come into effect immediately, and then it will be introduced for negative vetting. The regulation itself is rather straightforward. This will to revoke the designation of election date on the 27th of March as the date. It will be replaced by the 8th of May. The regulation will also revoke certain notices by the Chief Electoral Officer in relation to election locations and various matters. This is a difficult decision because it involves the Chief Executive's election. But we think that with the consent of the EXCO and by way of invocation emergency regulation ordinance, this is in line with the current situation in Hong Kong, and it is also in line with public interest. I'll answer questions now.
If you have questions, please raise your hands. When we call upon you, please state the name of the organization you represent and phone. the one in white in front, cable TV. 1 year ago, the LegCo election was deferred. At that time, there were only 149 confirmed cases. Sorry, I can't hear you clearly. Please go slower. Cable TV. Greetings, Chief Executive. 1 year ago, when LegCo election was postponed, there were only 149 confirmed cases. Now there are a few thousand confirmed cases, so CE election is to be postponed. So looking at this present moment, do you think that LegCo election should have taken place as scheduled at that time instead of postponing it? Mr. Tam Yu-chung, NPC Deputy, said that there should be a deferral months or even longer. Now, right now for the pandemic, it may take 2 to 3 months or even longer for it to subside. So why isn't it deferred for even longer time? My third question is, for this decision, is it a decision within the government internally? Has instruction been taken from the central government? Have you taken into consideration the second term of you? All right. Later on, when you ask questions, please speak louder because recently my hearing is not that good. All right. 3 questions. Last year, it's the year before last year, on the 31st July 2020, I announced that the 6th of September 2020 LegCo election, that is the 7th LegCo election, should be postponed by 1 year. And at that time, it is different from now. We were already in the nomination period, and the 31st July was already the last day for nomination. And I said at that time that it was a very difficult decision because some people had already submitted the nomination forms. But then 1 week before, in July, there were more than 100 confirmed cases. We said that now we have 1,000 cases, so 100 cases was not that much. But then for the third wave, we haven't seen that number. And we are not like prophets. We won't be able to know that 140 odd was already the peak. And now I can't say that the 6,000 odd cases yesterday was already the peak. If you consider from public health's perspective, I think that decision by is very reasonable. And at that time, I spent a lot of time to explain about this large-scale LegCo election in 4 million odd electors, 600 odd polling stations, 30,000 odd workers. It won't be possible for us to control the infection of the virus. And in many different parts of the world, the elections were postponed. So if you consider the actual circumstances then, it was still a right decision. But why this time don't we defer it for a longer time? As explained just now, concerning the polling day, there are 3 factors to consider. Of course, there may be some dilemma or conflicts among these 3 considerations. From epidemic point of view, we do want more time to keep the pandemic under control. Well, based on the work that we are doing now, we believe that 2 to 3 months. However, this deferment has not given us 2 to 3 months because nomination will start on 3rd of April and on 8th of May there would be polling, so around 2 weeks. So we are doing our best to control the pandemic. We hope that with the support of the Central, we'll be able to keep in a stable condition. But then still, there are the second and third factors. The second factor is that we have to leave some time for the chief executive-elect to do preparation work. If he is returned on the 8th of May, there is still 2 months' time, which is a reasonable time for him to form his team. Now, for a CE-elect, I have my own experience, first-hand experience. After being elected, after being accepted by the central government and after taking the oath, well, there is a lot of work to do. For example, the necessary ceremony and the visit by the central government leaders. Well, the chief executive-elect will have to form his team, and then those members need to be nominated by central government. So if polling takes place on 8th of May, there will still be 2 months before 30th June for the chief executive-elect to do the work. So this is an acceptable option. The third factor is that we are talking about a fair, impartial election, and we don't need to compromise on the usual principles. There should be at least 14 days for nomination and 21 days for polling after nomination is closed. So with this timing, we are able to maintain all the principles. We adhere to all important principles and rules for an election. So that's how we have come up with this timetable. The third question is the role of the central government. I am a chief executive responsible to both the central government and Hong Kong. So according to the basic law, I am accountable to the central people's government. Whenever there are important issues, the CE will have to make a report. And in the past 4 years or so, I think I have had the most chances of making reports because many things happened in Hong Kong. And when it comes to election, it is not a broad-brushed report because on the 11th of March 2021, the NPC passed or made a decision on improving the election method in the Hong Kong SAR. It is a decision passed by the whole NPC, and para 8 of the decision states that the chief executive of the Hong Kong SAR should, in relation to CE election arrangements and election organization and other important matters, make report to the Central People's Government on a timely manner. So to answer your question, the SARG is of the view that the 6th CE election should be postponed. I have already made a report to the central government, and I have got the central government's consent. Thank you. Next, please. The gentleman in the center of the back, please.
You said last week that you couldn't see a need to postpone the CE election. Could you explain why you've changed your stance? Was it because of President Xi's comment that controlling the pandemic was the government's top priority? And secondly, is there any chance that the government may have to further postpone the election if the virus situation remains severe in early May? And are you optimistic that the new CE will be able to come into office as scheduled on July the 1st? And it's extending the current term of the administration, one of the options. And also, do you intend to run for the CE election? And lastly, about the news about citywide testing or lockdown, government will down the whole city. And if a full-scale lockdown is needed, how long do you expect that to be, and how would that be executed? Thank you.
Again, 3 questions. Now, first of all, when you said that I have changed my stance, I want to remind myself what I have said on previous occasions. Actually, the media have been asking me this question on several occasions, and on almost every occasion that at the present moment, because the epidemic situation is changing so rapidly. Nobody could give any absolute guarantee that what will happen the next day and the next day and so on. So if I refer you to an answer in English, it was stand up on the 15th of February. A similar question was asked by a reporter. I said, at this moment, the plan for the chief executive election remains the same. That is, the nomination period will start on the 20th of February and the voting day will be on the 27th of March. But as I just said, one of the things I need to clarify is because of the severity and the speed of this latest wave of the epidemic, we have to continuously review the situation, adjust the measures, and seek additional help. So I could not preclude any possibilities at this moment. So I hope you remember that. So I will not accept that this is a change in my stance. This is a fulfillment of my promise that I will continuously review the situation and adjust the measures or the policy that need to be taken in the best interests of Hong Kong. Invoking the ERO is not an easy decision, but it is one under the present circumstances that serves the overall public interest of Hong Kong. Now, the second question is a very because, again, I don't have a crystal ball. I could not guarantee that by early February, when the nomination period starts again, that we will not have COVID-19 cases in Hong Kong. We still have about 6 weeks to fight this epidemic, and with the full support of the Central People's Government, and you are seeing this support coming almost every day, and the more sort of tough measures or more decisive measures that the Hong Kong SAR government will take because of this additional timely support from the Central People's Government, I remain optimistic. And I appeal to the people of Hong Kong to remain and confident that we will be able to overcome this public health crisis in the same way that we have overcome previous crises, whether it is this COVID-19 epidemic or riots that we have seen in the latter part of 2019. So, but what will happen if somehow by April, we were still facing a situation as serious as today? And similarly, the judgment is it would not be safe to start a CE election. Then, of course, one option is to do another time of postponing. We still have a little bit of time to postpone it again with the 14 days and the 21 days. But that will take very close to the end of June, which means that it will heavily compromise the second factor, and that is to allow sufficient time for the CE-elect to form his team and to complete the necessary work before he or she takes office on the 1st of July. So it will be a very difficult decision by then. But that's all we could do because the current term government could not do anything that goes beyond our term. So options like extending the term of the chief executive or postponing the CE election to after 30th of June are not decisions that we could take. They could be made by the Central People's Government. And I believe that since the Central People's Government is supportive of our current decision, when the time comes, then the Central People's Government will sort of take over and find a solution to the problem then. Now, the third question is about the next stage of managing or fighting this COVID-19 epidemic. I just mentioned that with the full support and additional help from the central government, we will be undertaking more tough measures. So one of the measures that we are planning very seriously, is universal testing. So we will test everyone in Hong Kong. But mandatory testing and a complete city lockdown may not need to go hand in hand. It depends on the actual situation. In our case, having examined the unique situation in Hong Kong, we probably will just go for universal testing of everyone. But testing more times, which I understand was the method used by Macau, for example. Macau tested the 600,000 residents not only once, but twice, or sometimes in other cities in the mainland, in order to ensure that we will eliminate any remaining infections in society. So that is something that we are planning. But complete city lockdown is something we are not planning. So I need not answer your other questions about how long and what to do and so on. Thank you.
我哋問多兩位記者問題。
Two more questions. Questions from two more reporters, the one at the front. I'm from CCTV. I'd like to ask about the epidemic. Recently, we have seen lots of people to help with the anti-epidemic efforts. I'd like to ask about the departments and bureaus. What are they doing? And how are they doing? Mainland experts have come to Hong Kong to support. This has boosted the confidence of Hong Kong people. So in relation to the expert team from the mainland, have they helped? First of all, like to say to President Mr. Baolong, for their care and support in after the Hong Kong SAR have made a number of requests. It will all be done. That means view that anything can help give their full. You see that there are coming to Hong Kong. Yesterday, I have received of that there are mobile testing has also situation, and there will be resources. You can see from different areas we are receive reports from the Secretary for mainland experts. These are experts. I would like to invite experts to help us. Yesterday, we have received experts. Now we have seen more cases. To draw reference from the experience of departments and bureaus and their to say to you and dispel certain rumors. Some people and people are not bureaus are working hard and together. Every evening, we've mobilized. We have asked the Inland Revenue Department. They may be administrative officers. 5 task forces to head the task, count their experience and whether handle the work. To liaise and coordinate our converted into community. The Secretary from the but Yao is familiar with key from England in terms of medical supplies. Supplies from the mainland. These medical supplies. So secretaries to head different areas. Starting from today, the 18th of February, China that's the new task of the RTH. Use with frontline work. We all work together, everyone within.
特首，
你好。
翻幾個問題啦，即係其實連日啦，亦都要感受睇到呢一啲即係新次嘅全民檢測，會唔會隔離設施係不足，醫護人手？
Isolation facilities or healthcare workers period hospital enough health the 10,000 odd patients. First of hospitals and outside the hospitals they had unacceptable, and you have made a post. I said that this is really healthcare workers are so during the and that is we identified a used as a temporary sheltered, but then that night, well, that operation actually the Secretary for Security and the to patients, but very often, well, an operation could start. Yesterday had to be solved within today. So not only rely on the hospital authority. So as I said just now, the SWD that they should the hospitals by ambulance, and these elderly care homes can take them back if they are not capable of eyes, masks, and also a rapid test. They solved at source. Hospitals by the hospitals, they should be moved indoors. Now, if elders, they are COVID patients, then they live in Penny's Bay. There may still be places in Penny's Bay. Work hard for the elder. An operation, we identified some community public buildings and convert them into wait there for treatment. Medical workers look after the elders. So I can say to solve it. However, we must work. Things will be even more difficult. And hospital authority, universal mandatory testing, we are not detailed scale complicated operations is the person in charge, and you may and he is capable. Well, Mr. Zhang February the same day to 600 odd distributing the poll forms. There are enough venues. If there is enough, is working on that. Another strength of Mr. Zhang is then we have to make because you won't be able to guarantee if adults pass mandatory testing exercises in show up. They either did not open the Hong Kong ID card, or is another enhancement, and that is isolation facilities. There is no early isolation. So we must enhance our isolation facilities as much as and 3 temporary isolation facilities, another 3,000 units. Well, they hotel rooms, 27,000 units, and now the center to so that we can cope with detected from the mandatory testing. Well, hotel rooms, and for those going into the cases with no symptoms or only very mild symptoms, is such that there are not many. Speaking, there are not many serious or isolation facilities. There is not a need for the. So you may say that things are difficult. this wave. We hope that in the coming period, we will be able to in history of reunification, and then development action plan. There are a number of as long as we get the people's support, that the pandemic.
再次呼籲
the public again that they should refrain from going engage in social activities. It will increase the infection risk, and that may cause the high number of cases. So please stay at home. And if you have hired foreign domestic helpers, please do your best to ask your helper to stay at home. What we saw last week was very worrying. On Sundays, we saw a large number of foreign domestic helpers congregating. I would say that this Sunday, when we take law enforcement action, we will not show mercy anymore. If we see more than 2 people, we will mete out penalty tickets, which will cost you $10,000 out of pocket. The third appeal I'd like to make is get vaccinated. The recent vaccination situation is satisfactory, but we still need to work on it. We hope that in the coming 10 days or so till the end of February, we hope that for the eligible population, we can reach a vaccination rate of 90%. Yesterday, it was 84.9%, so there is a chance. Sometimes the chance may look slim, but if we persevere, we will get there. So we can see 90% at least in vaccination rate by the end of February. It will pave a good way for our work at the next stage. For elderly people, from the start of this outbreak and those above the age of 70, we have a vaccination rate of 60%. For those above the age of 80, we have more than 40% vaccination rate. So please get vaccinated. I believe that this will lay a better foundation for our anti-epidemic efforts, and it will enable the smooth conduct of the CE election. Thank you.